It's a case that's captured the imagination of most South Africans. Yes, it's the trial of Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu. She takes the stand again tomorrow. She was arrested in March 2018 for allegedly masterminding the deaths of 6 of her family members to claim insurance payouts. To discuss the case and her reactions in court and what goes into the profiling of such a suspect is former SAPS profiler and clinical psychologist Gérard Labuschagne. Thanks so much for your time, Gérard. We appreciate it. I think this case has truly shocked South Africans, and it's been a week that she's been on the stand. Many people are questioning her mental states. Many people are questioning her responses and reactions to while she's being cross-examined. What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it's quite interesting that she actually took the stand. You know, the majority of criminal trials, the accused person doesn't take the stand. They're not required to by law, and the court's not allowed to make an adverse inference by the fact that they're not getting into the witness stand. So I've had very few serial murderers or potential serial murderers who actually have gotten into the stand. So I think that's interesting that that decision was made. There's a lot of talk about how she's almost been acting up for the cameras, and I've seen that a few times with certain types of people who've murdered numerous individuals over a period of time. It's almost as if when they get to the trial, it's their opportunity to almost have a showcase. They don't almost sort of get the insight and realize that actually this is the worst thing they could probably be doing for themselves in the eyes of the court that's going to be observing all of this behavior.
What do we make of her behavior and facial expressions? What kind of message does that send for somebody that's on trial for allegedly killing 6 of her family members or plotting to kill 6 of her family members and another 5? Her interactions with journalists, you know, in the beginning she was quite friendly, and in the end she became quite aggressive by throwing things at them. And I mean, she's constantly rolling her eyes during her trial. What do we make of this? What kind of message does this send?
Well, I think obviously the only person that really matters in that courtroom would be, of course, the judge. And I haven't been watching it all, so I don't know if the judge has an assessor. They're going to be watching this, and this is going to have an impact on how they view the accused. You know, if you're standing there saying that you've been falsely accused of these horrific crimes, you'd almost want more the looks of shock and horror on your face and sort of this aghast look, you know, when these accusations are made towards you. So behaving in an aggressive way, smiling, playing up for the cameras, clearly doesn't kind of support someone who's trying to say, but I've been falsely accused of something horrific. You would want, even if they're trying to then, if there's a chance of being found guilty, you'd also want the courts to see you as someone who is looking remorseful for what you've done, etc. And she's not playing either of those, which again can point to some kind of lack of social insight. Probably the aggression towards a journalist is when she realized that her persona that she'd been portraying to the journalists was perhaps, you know, working against her, and not perhaps what she in her mind was hoping. Is probably why she then turned more to an aggressive stance towards the journalists.
What's also quite frightening, isn't it, is the fact that she's a former police officer, somebody that we're supposed to be trusting, and she has allegedly plotted to kill her family members.
Yeah, look, I mean, first, as I said, when I started off talking, I used the word serial murder, because that's been a lot of the questions, is she not? And of course, she's not yet found guilty of anything, so this is all tentative. But if she was found guilty of 2 or more of these murders, even using a hitman to be the actual instrument of the murder, I would still then regard her as a serial murderer. Now, this wouldn't be the first police serial murderer we've had. You know, we've had Kobus Geldenhuys from 89 and 92, stationed in Norwood, who killed a number of people and raped some more. Then we had Marius van den Heerfer in 91, 93, who murdered 3 people. He was, I think, working at Hillbrow Police Station. So that's not unheard of. It's, of course, not the common for policemen to be committing crimes of this nature, or any crimes, hopefully. But this definitely is not the first person who was in the police who was murdering multiple people.
But it also speaks about how she's done this to the people who are closest to her, even though it doesn't make it any better if she had done it to somebody who wasn't that close to her. But, I mean, these were people in her immediate circle.
Yeah. You know, I think we can all understand, we've all been angry, we've all had almost little road rage incidences where we, in our minds, fantasy, imagine, you know, punching the person in the face or doing something more serious, or if we imagine if someone was to hurt a loved one, how we could perhaps, you know, take revenge, etc. So I think that's common for us to think about. But now you're talking about a person who is targeting the people who have done nothing to this individual. This is your closest family members, almost the last person you would expect someone to be murdering. So the question would be, why does that person not have this moral hurdle that we all have, A, not to murder anybody, and B, not to murder the people who care about you, the people who are the closest because they're blood ties, or people that you're dating. So I think, again, I cannot make a diagnosis about her, and I don't know if she was sent for observation somewhere, but one would start to wonder about your personality structure. So I would like to think that at some point, if she was in front of either a state psychiatrist or someone for sentencing, that they would be exploring the possibility of the individual being a psychopath.
And then just lastly, Gérard, I'm not sure if you have actually seen this case in New Zealand of a woman that's charged with murdering her 3 young daughters, and this was just after arriving in New Zealand from South Africa. I think she appeared in court on Saturday. Again, another horrifying story of, normally a mother's seen as somebody who is the caring and the mother, and here you have somebody who's allegedly killed her 3 daughters.
Yeah. Again, a very tragic event, and I suppose in the coming weeks we'll hear more about what has happened. I believe she was formally arrested. Again, you'd like to think that someone like that would be sent off for some kind of mental observation. One would look at the history and background of violence, or the other mental health issues that would help you understand exactly what took place and whether she could be held criminally responsible for her behavior. And that would have to be done through whatever the New Zealand sort of court process is, in other words, the equivalent to what we have here with the Criminal Procedure Act. And that'll have to be explored. And again, it's killing a loved one. It can either be on the one side of the spectrum, someone who is psychopathic in nature, possibly, and on the other side of the spectrum, someone who is perhaps experiencing mental illness, and then a range of possibilities in between. But definitely, I think they will be sending her for some kind of forensic observation.
Great. Thanks so much for your insights. We really do appreciate it. That was Gérard Labuschagne, who is a clinical psychologist. It's fascinating to try and understand what goes in the mind of those that are accused in such cases.